Hi, my name is Mike Quinn, and this is the Ultimate Frontline Leadership Training Podcast. And today we're going to be handling how to properly handle problem employees. Now, this is a problem that vexes all managers. Everywhere you go, there's always somebody trying to throw a wrench in the monkey works here. And this is how you handle people who just don't want to cooperate or just have their own vision on how things should be done and just pursue their own objectives. So this is how you get everybody to play on the same team and to respect the rules and stuff that everybody's got to go follow, working for whatever company you're at the moment. All right, now if a team member is hurting your company's reputation by underperforming, you must call them out on it in private and let them know that their job is on the line, or it'll never get better. If somebody's doing something they're not supposed to do and you don't say anything about it, you're giving what's called a tacit approval or a silent approval. Take, for example, let's say a child is going into the kitchen, he's going to sneak a cookie. So he goes over to the cookie jar, right? He gets on a stool or whatever, gets on the counter, opens the cookie jar, reaches his hand in the cookie jar, and all of a sudden, mom walks in. He looks over at mom, and this is what the child usually does. They go, right? They're continually watching you to see if you're going to do anything or say anything about them getting that cookie. They've already been caught. Now they're going to go, well, is it okay if I do this? And they're just going to keep going. Well, they're looking for that tacit approval, that silent approval that says, well, if you don't say anything, it must be okay. That's what all employees do. If they do something and nobody says anything about it, then they're going to think it must be okay, or nobody's going to say anything, and they're going to continue to do it. So how do you get your team members who are just being obstinate and just on their own path, how do you get them to go along with the flow and to produce the desired results you need them to do in the time you need them to do it in? Well, you have to call them out on it. You just have to. If you don't, you're going to get the silent approval, and they're just going to keep doing it. And then if they keep doing it, now everybody else on the team is going to look and see that behavior and see they're not getting in trouble for it. Guess what you're doing too? You're giving the other people approval, a silent approval, to do the same thing. Because if person A is doing it and they're not getting in trouble, then me being person B and C and D, etc., we can all do it and nobody will get in trouble because, that first person's not getting in trouble. Now, different companies might want to handle things in different ways. They have different company cultures. Some companies protect seniority in your company. That may make it more difficult to handle these issues than other companies who are more normal or who operate on a regular basis, saying, if you do something bad, you can get terminated for it. Some companies don't let you do it. So whatever company you're working with, for whatever reasons, you need to make sure that these procedures are going to work for you. And if they're not, modify them slightly to follow your company's positions. You never want to do something that nobody else is doing. Everybody on the management team really should act in a unified manner, and they should all be fairly consistent. And I know consistency in this day and age is a four-letter word, but we really want to try to be as consistent as possible if we want to improve the working environment. Nobody wants to work in an environment where it's okay for person A to do something and person B not to do that very same thing. Nobody wants to work there because you don't know what's going to be okay or not. You don't know if anything you do or say on any given day is going to get you a write-up or get you in trouble or not. So you need to be as consistent as possible. So all that being said, here's some of the procedures that I've used in the past and that I've been trained and shown that are very effective in handling these types of employee issues. Now, the first thing you want to do is show restraint, an understanding, and a determination to solve the problem, all right? You don't want to look like you're trying to punish a problem teammate. You want to make sure that you're not addressing the person, you're addressing the problem. All right, always address the problem, not the person. That way it makes it a little bit more difficult for the employee to take things personally because it's the behavior that's being attacked, not the employee. This behavior cannot continue, all right? The employee can continue, but the behavior cannot. So separate the problem from the employee when you're giving your teammate some feedback, all right? You never want to do this when you're angry. Nothing has ever really solved anything when somebody acts angrily. It usually makes the situation even worse. So if you're angry at the moment and you need to talk to an employee about something, you need to remove yourself, go for a walk around the building, go to the break room and watch, whatever. Just calm down and then reassess the situation. You want to, number one, establish what the problem or problems are. So that's the first thing you want to do when you're nice and calm. Say, okay, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, etc. And then you want to attack maybe a couple of the problems that are related, or at least just one of the problems. You never want to try to accomplish a huge amount of things in a 5-minute meeting. You really want to address what the problem is, the most important problem. And you want to start collecting your evidence. Step 2 is collect your evidence. Take pictures, talk to other employees, and write this stuff down in your notebook. All right, all this stuff is very important. So in your notes, all right, write down who you talked to, what day it was, what they said, what you asked, etc. Make as good a notes as you possibly can, because you're going to be using this in future documentation. So collect your evidence, you take pictures or whatever, and if you do take pictures, it's kind of best to be able to print the pictures so you can put these in the employee file if you need to. But for the very first conversation, all you want to do is call the employee out and let them know you know what's going on, and let them know it can no longer happen. So establish the problem, collect the evidence, and then pull the employee aside. You don't have to do this in public. Matter of fact, you probably shouldn't. Pull the employee aside and say, look, we've got this problem here. Establish what the problem is, show what the evidence is, and then allow the employee to respond. Maybe there's something you don't know that is causing the employee to do this, or something in the past. Maybe they've been written up before for doing something and now they're doing it this way. Whatever. You want to make sure that you're just not attacking an employee for something that you just don't like. You want to make sure that there is a problem, and you've got some evidence of the problem, but maybe you don't have all of the evidence. So after you've presented your evidence, allow the employee to respond, and put those responses in your notebook. Put the date that you had the little talk and what their response was. And say, okay, great. Well, hopefully this won't happen again in the future, all right? It really has to stop now. And I'm going to talk to whoever, if maybe they pointed some fingers, I'm going to talk to everybody involved and make sure we're all on the same page. This cannot continue. Now use the employee feedback to do some more research. Ask the other people that were involved, is this a correct summary of the problem that the new employee has posted? Could this possibly be a reason why we're observing these types of things? And talk to all the other employees, if other employees are involved. And make sure that, hey, maybe they have a point. Maybe, something did make this happen. But the bottom line is, if the problem persists, you must still continue to collect evidence and talk to other employees and make some more notes in your notebook, etc. And now, if the problem persists, if you're still getting the problem, then what you need to do is you need to start documenting. You need to present the evidence in a documented form that's going to go into their employee file, which means they can also take legal action against it if for some reason they're not happy about this. So make sure that whatever objections they brought up, you have counted, you've got evidence stating that this was not correct and this was just an excuse, etc. Or collect the evidence that says, oh, look, they did have a prior issue to this, and let the other employees know that, hey, this is why this is happening, but we all still need to stop it. It's got to stop right now, and everybody's told, okay, it can't happen. If the problem still persists, then you go to documentation. You take the pictures, you talk to the other employees, you write down all these responses on a piece of paper, you print out the pictures that you're taking for evidence and note the dates and times and stuff that these things were taken. And now you invite another employee, usually another manager in, to be as a witness to the documentation process. You never want to document somebody or write somebody up alone, because now you have a he said, she said, or you said, they said type of situation, and you can't use that. It can't be one person's opinion versus another, because that's not going to hold up in court, and you're going to lose that court battle, and the employee is going to get some compensation as a result. So you want to make sure that if you're doing something like this, it needs to be correct. You need to be on the right side of this, and you need to fix the problem, again, not the person. Gather your evidence, print out all your advice, write up the documentation, have another manager look it over and make sure that it's not too one-sided, and that you're being fair, and you're also separating the problem from the person. And then you hold a documentation meeting. You call the employee in, you have your witness sit with you, you present the evidence and stuff. The other person just sits there and just listens. They're just a witness. And then you write up the employee, you present the documentation. And at this time, at the end of this, they can also put their response at the bottom of the write-up, or on the back of the write-up, or they can include a separate piece of paper. It doesn't really matter. But they have a right. Every employee has a right to respond to any document accusing them of malfeasance of some kind. So give them that right. Give them that opportunity. Again, sometimes these excuses that they'll make will come to haunt them again in the future. So, it's something that you need to do. And if it does result in new evidence that says, maybe somebody else may be at fault, etc., then that's great too. We need to get to the bottom of the problem. We don't need to attack an employee. So after that second meeting, hopefully the employee knows that, hey, they just got written up. This is serious. And if the problem continues to persist, then we've got to continue on the documentation process. Now, during this time, you're going to have new pictures, you're going to have new evidence, new things are going to come into play that show that this is a consistent pattern that has not been stopped, and that this employee was involved. So gather all this evidence. Again, bring in another manager in as a witness, present all this documentation, etc., and let them respond to it again. But let them know, too, that any further occurrence of this kind can include further disciplinary action up to and including termination. That doesn't mean you're going to terminate them the next time. That just tells the employee this stuff is serious, okay? We're talking about major changes here. And if we don't see these major changes, we're going to make some ourselves. All right? And it needs to be done not in an angry tone, but in a very calm and authoritative manner. You need to say, I'm a manager of this company. I'm speaking as a representative of this company, and we want this action to stop. Now, if this problem is still persisting, you're going to have to ask yourself some key questions. At this point, you're going to have to say, does this happen on busy shifts or slow shifts? Like, let's say the employee is purposely just dragging their feet, just going slow all the time, and they're just not performing. And you can't produce all the products you need to produce because they're not pulling their weight. Let's say that this in particular is this problem. Well, is this happening on a busy shift or on slow shifts? Does it happen before a manager gets into the building, or is it after a manager gets into the building? If it's something that happens, let's say before a manager shows up, and they just show up early and they don't do anything until the manager shows up, and now they've wasted a few hours, you found out that this person is not a reliable employee to be coming in before supervision. This person needs to be supervised. And having them come in before a supervisor shows up is just wasting company money. So we need to stop having that employee come in before a manager. They need to come in after the manager. Now, if they're not producing, sometimes on a slow shift, that maybe might not be that big of a deal because, okay, we're not that busy anyway, and so the products are getting made. Maybe it only happens on a busier shift when they're not pulling their weight and things start to fall behind. Or maybe the extra labor, because on a busy shift you have more sales, which means you have more money to pay for more labor. Maybe the non-performing employee, it can be masked or be hidden by their non-performance with all this extra labor, but they can't be hidden on a slower shift. So you got to figure out, is when they're working, is that affecting their performance more or less? So if they're doing it on a slow shift, then move them over to busier shifts where more labor can include more employees to help spread the load more. If it's happening on busy shifts and you just can't get on top of the production that you need to get done, so what you probably want to do is move them onto a slower shift so it's not going to hurt your busier days, but make sure that they're also coming in after supervisors there, and make sure that they're working on a shift that's not going to impact their overall sales as much. All right, they're not going to hurt your sales as much on a slower shift as it would maybe possibly on a busier shift. So figure out maybe where they can be placed that won't hurt your department as much as it's currently being hurt. All right, so we've looked at the schedule, we figured out what things to do, and if the problem still persists, continue to take more evidence, more witness statements, put more stuff in your book, go sit down in the office, and calmly write up your next write-up. And make sure that it's including all the new evidence, printing out all the new evidence to go in the file, etc. And make sure you're ready for the next write-up session. Again, bring in another manager, maybe even different managers. That way other people can give you their perspective on how the meeting went, and what other types of evidence you may need to get, or maybe offer you some advice that maybe the previous manager that you invited didn't give you. So get some different perspectives and some different opportunities to fix this problem. All right, if the problem still persists, again, document everything, make the write-up and stuff, have somebody look it over, make sure it's not getting personal and that it's just focusing on the problem. And then you're going to have another meeting with the employee. What I usually do is I personally have a 3-strike process. If after the first, which is just a verbal conversation, if that didn't work, I use the notes of that to write the first write-up saying, I talked to you before about this on such and such a date. We had a conversation and this was the result of the conversation, but this problem still persisted, so now we're at the documentation stage. And every time you document, you reference the previous documentations so that each documentation you give them shows that other stuff has been done and the problem is not getting solved. More things were done, the problem still isn't getting solved. More things are done, the problem is just not getting solved. So now we have an opportunity to either terminate the employee. After 3 strikes, I would normally just terminate them. If you can, for some reason, maybe they're a relative of the owners, or maybe you work in a company where seniority, they've got a lot of seniority, who knows, but if for some reason termination is not an option at this moment, then what you want to do is start working with the schedule. Start saying, okay, great. Now we were a 5-day-a-week schedule for you. Now we're down to 4 days a week. We need to limit the exposure we have for this problem. Remember, not the person, for this problem on our sales. All right, this problem is affecting our sales. The sales is affecting the profitability, and the profitability is affecting how we can pay for all of our labor. And the people who are working really hard, they want to get paid for sure. And the people who aren't really working really hard, they need to be removed from the payroll as much as possible. So you start for 1 day, cut them down to 4 days. If they were 4 days, cut them down to 3, etc. Just remove a day. Now this is financially impacting them. This is going to hurt them financially, and so maybe this will be the motivation they'll need to correct their errors. If this does not solve the problem, then guess what? We go through the documentation process again and remove another day off their schedule. Or if they were already down to like 2 days, maybe we want to suspend them for a week without pay. This, again, financially penalizes the employee from doing what they think is their God-given right to do, whatever it is they're doing or not doing. They need to know that we all are going to perform at a certain level for this company in order to provide profitability for this company, which in turn gives us all jobs at this company. So if we mess with the profitability of the company, our profits, our personal profits, our paychecks are going to suffer as well. So either take another day off them or suspend them for a week. And again, when they come back, if things still don't get better, we're obviously dealing with somebody who just does not want to do anything. And maybe they're looking to get fired. Maybe they're looking to do a lawsuit or whatever. But with all this documentation you've got, a lawsuit is very unlikely because you have your butt covered really well. And you've got other managers looking this over and making sure it's addressing the problem and not the person. It's going to be very hard for them to have a legal standing against you at all. Now, doing all this sounds like a lot of work, and actually it is. It's a lot of work to write up and document an employee, as it should be. It shouldn't be an easy, free 5-minute thing. Hey, I'm just going to smack you around a bit and hopefully you'll change your tune. If all managers did this, it would remove the mean and nasty managers from the bunch, because they'd have to go through all this work to justify the problem-solving function of their documentation as opposed to their employee harassment part. So this allows the company to make sure that their employees are getting treated fairly. So it'll reduce erroneous conclusions and wrongful persecutions and terminations. And it will send a message to all the employees that this type of behavior will not be tolerated. So if you think that they're not going to go back to and talk to their employees about what's happening, they are. And the other employees are going, oh, well, if this is happening, then I can't do this either, because I don't want to get written up, or I don't want to get suspended, or I don't want to go down to 3 days a week, or whatever have you. So it's going to send a message to the entire crew. So if you have a couple of people that are doing this, pick the top person, the leader of the bunch, start them on the documentation process. And everybody else who's on their team is going to go, wow, this is not a winning team. I want to join the winning team, and hopefully it'll correct their behaviors as well. Now, securing your department is crucial to all leaders, but doing so in a productive and caring manner can also save a relationship that might be salvageable. Maybe they were just, butthurt about something that happened to them in the past, but after all this documentation thing, they go, okay, I guess it really isn't worth it. I guess I'll give up my grudge and go back to work. Maybe it'll help solve the problem. And that's really what we're looking to do. We're looking to solve the problem. We're not looking for a legal way to fire somebody. We just want the problem to go away. And that's all we're focusing on. And anytime it starts to get personal in the meeting when you're delivering documentation, remember, back it off. It's the problem that cannot persist. You are perfectly fine. It's this problem we can't allow to happen again. How are we going to fix this problem? And hopefully that is the attitude that you're going to take during the documentation meetings. Now, if an employee threatens a legal response, know that all this evidence and documentation stuff is going to help you in the future too. So it's going to cover your butt. So if they want to threaten this or threaten that, it's perfectly fine with you. It's, whatever they want to do. They have a perfectly well right to do, to respond however they want to respond. And you're going to be okay with that because you're responding in a proper manner as well. You're giving them dignity. You're letting them know it's the problem and not them that's wrong, and that it needs to be fixed, or things are going to happen, and then things start happening. And so they're going to take you seriously in the future too. So hopefully this will help you understand the documentation process and how to take an employee who's just not performing at all, and maybe even getting other crew members to not perform well at all, and turning your entire department into just chaos and backstabbing and angry words, and just, everybody's just having a rotten day. This is how to change it so everybody can come back to work and have fun again and enjoy their job. And not have to work really hard because somebody else isn't working at all, or whatever the problem has to be. So this documentation process is great. Try using the 3 strikes method. It works great for me. Knowing that I've got 3 documents on the same or related issues within a 6-month period. Look in your employee manual and see what they say to. Maybe it might be a 3-month period. Maybe it's a 12-month period. Maybe it doesn't even say in your employee manual. Maybe you don't have an employee manual. Maybe you work for a small mom and pop firm. Whatever you need to do needs to be done in a legal fashion, and make sure that you talk with other people in your company to make sure that this roadmap is going to work with your company's culture. All right? And I look forward to talking to you again, and have a great week.